I always thought I was the lucky one in the family. My grandparents set up a trust fund for me when I was born, meant to be handed over on my 25th birthday to start my life. But on the morning of my 25th birthday, I walked into the bank, handed them my ID, and the teller looked at me with pure pity. She said, "Honey, this account was emptied 3 years ago. Over $800,000. Gone. And the only people who had access to it were my parents." Here is the insane story of how my perfect parents stole my future to fund their secret double life, and how I spent the next 2 years systematically destroying everything they built. Let me give you some context. I grew up in a wealthy suburb of Chicago. My parents, Richard and Eleanor, were the picture of success. My dad was a senior partner at a law firm, and my mom ran a high-end charity foundation. We had the cars, the country club memberships, the perfect Christmas cards. But behind closed doors, they were obsessed with appearances. They controlled everything I did, where I went to college, who I dated, even my major. I was supposed to be a doctor to fit their image. I played the part because I knew that at 25, I'd get my grandparents' trust fund and finally be free. I'd spent years secretly planning to use that money to open my own bakery, my actual dream. I had business plans, location scouted, everything. So when the bank teller told me the account was empty, my entire world collapsed. I drove home in a daze and confronted them. I walked into their pristine kitchen and slammed the bank statement on the marble counter. My dad didn't even flinch. He just sipped his coffee and said, "We needed it for an investment. You'll get it back eventually. Stop being so dramatic." My mom chimed in saying, "We raised you. We paid for your life. That money was basically ours anyway." They gaslit me, telling me I was ungrateful and selfish for caring about silly money when they had provided so much for me. They refused to tell me what the investment was. I left their house that day and didn't speak to them for a year. I had to take on 3 jobs just to keep my head above water. I was working 80-hour weeks, exhausted, angry, and broke. I was investigating. I needed to know what investment was worth stealing their daughter's future. I started digging. I knew my dad was smart, but my mom was careless. She used the same password for everything: her email, her shopping accounts, her banking. One night, I guessed her password and got into her email. What I found wasn't just an investment. It was a massive, tangled web of lies. My parents weren't successful anymore. They were completely broke. My dad had been quietly fired from his law firm 2 years prior for embezzling client funds. To keep up appearances, he and my mom started running a Ponzi-style scheme through my mom's charity. They were taking donations meant for underprivileged kids and using it to pay their country club dues, their mortgages, and my dad's massive gambling debts. My trust fund? They hadn't invested it. They had blown it at casinos and on luxury vacations to pretend everything was fine. I felt sick. They had stolen from sick kids to fund their lies, and they used my money to cover their tracks. I could have just gone to the police right then, but I wanted to make sure they couldn't weasel their way out of it. My dad still had connections. I needed bulletproof evidence, so I played the long game. I called my mom, crying, and told her I forgave them. I said I understood why they needed the money and that I just wanted my family back. She bought it instantly. Her ego wouldn't let her believe anything else. For the next 6 months, I played the perfect forgiving daughter. I went to their dinner parties, smiled for their photos, and all the while, I was gathering documents. I found the ledger where my dad kept track of the charity funds. I found the offshore accounts where they tried to hide the remaining money. I made copies of everything, every bank transfer, every fake charity invoice, every threatening email my dad sent to his former partners. The climax came on their 30th wedding anniversary. They were hosting a massive, lavish party at their country club, paid for, of course, with stolen charity money. Everyone who was anyone in our town was there. I was asked to give a toast. I stood up, tapped my glass, and the room went quiet. I looked at my parents, who were smiling smugly, expecting me to sing their praises. Instead, I said, "My parents have taught me so much about loyalty and generosity. In fact, they are so generous, they donated my entire $800,000 trust fund to their charity." The room gasped. My parents' smiles froze. I continued, but the generosity didn't stop there. They've also been using all of your generous donations to fund their trips to Vegas. I pulled out a thick folder of documents and tossed them onto the center table. Here are the bank statements, the fake invoices, the gambling debts. My dad lunged for the folder, his face purple with rage, but it was too late. People were already picking up the papers. The whispers turned into shouts. The country club manager, who was also a major donor, called the police right then and there. I didn't stick around for the arrest. I walked out of the club, got in my car, and drove away. By Monday, the FBI was involved. The charity fraud was so extensive it made local news. My dad was arrested for embezzlement and fraud. My mom was charged as an accomplice. They lost the house, the cars, the memberships. Everything they had built their fake life on was gone. It's been 2 years since that night. My parents are currently serving time in federal prison. I never got my $800,000 back, but the state awarded me a portion of the assets they seized from my parents' estate. It wasn't enough to make me rich, but it was enough to finally open my bakery. I named it Karma's Kitchen. They stole my future, so I made sure they didn't have one either. Never let anyone tell you that you owe them your silence just because they're family.